Hi there. Nice to see you. Okay, I'm going to talk about something that I know that all of you here today, you have experiences of it and you have opinions on it. But then again, I'm going to talk about something that seems that most people aren't really interested in. It seems like when I start talking about these things, people will fall asleep. But I will talk about it anyway. And I will talk about sustainable housing. Okay, I've been working with sustainable buildings for a while. And it is really, really hard getting everything right when you build a sustainable house. It is possible, it is doable, but it's not easy. And I have one question that always lingers in my mind when I do these kind of projects. And that is, how will we ever be able to build all these houses for everyone in a sustainable way? Because it's hard, it's difficult. So how will we be able to build sustainable housing for everyone? And I think we should quickly dive into how we build sustainable houses, or what is sustainable houses. So shortly, I'm going to talk about VITRUVIUS. Architects know who he is. You don't maybe know who he is, but architects do. And I'm not going to talk about him. You can Google VITRUVIUS if you want to. But I'm going to talk about his 3 principles: FIRMITAS, UTILITAS, VENUSTAS. And that probably won't tell you anything either. But if we put them into English, then we have durability, convenience, and beauty. Now that's a different thing. You can imagine, I'm not going to show you any pictures of houses today. I usually cram my presentations full with pictures of houses. I won't have any today because I want you to imagine the houses, because you have seen a lot of buildings, you have seen the world, you know what it looks like. If I show you my pictures, I will narrow your perspective down to my own, and I don't want to do that. So, durability, convenience, beauty, that's how to build a good house if you fulfill all these 3 things. And you know, sometimes we people, we tend to kind of dig into one of these for some reason. We want to build really durable houses, but they look like bunkers and then not really nice to live in, and they're not beautiful. Or convenience. We have to build practical buildings, but sometimes we want to build really, really, really practical buildings, and they might not be durable, they might fall down, or they're not very beautiful to look at. Or again, we just focus on beauty. We want to build like really beautiful buildings, but then again, they might not be durable or convenient. So build durable houses. They shouldn't fall down, they shouldn't collapse, they should stand test of time, some wear and tear. And they should be practical for the people living in them and using them. And they should be beautiful. This is very important. Sometimes we understand or underestimate how important beauty is to people when it comes to buildings. So that's how you build a good building. But how will we build a good building that is sustainable? And then we have again something that's called the 3 pillars of sustainability. That sounds impressive, awesome, right? Yes. And the 3 pillars of sustainability are economy, society, and environment. Okay, so we have to build buildings that are sustainable for the economy, sustainable for society, and sustainable for environment. That means they cannot be too expensive when you build them. Or if you build too cheap housing, you focus on building really cheap products or cheap houses. But cheap houses are seldom very good, so they cannot be too cheap, or you cannot only focus on that. And society, they need to be sustainable for society. They need to add to society. They cannot increase things that are bad in society. The building should contribute to making a better society. And the environment, that's where I work most, making houses really environmental friendly, energy efficient, using organic materials and these kind of things. That's where I usually work. But here we have the recipe for a sustainable house or sustainable housing. It should be durable, convenient, beautiful. It should be economical sustainable, social sustainable, and environmental sustainable. So that's the recipe, and keep this recipe in mind while I go on. When we talk about for everyone, who are we talking about? Let's dive into that for a small moment. Around 1 billion people live in slum conditions today. That's not okay. And the amount is increasing. That means we are not fixing this problem. It's getting worse. And if you look at the definition of what a slum is, or just want to know what it is, if you don't already know, it's a densely populated, usually urban area marked by crowding, dirty, rundown housing, poverty, and social disorganization. So this is kind of the opposite to sustainable housing. Okay, I hope you can agree with me on that. And then we also have urbanization, another thing that makes this thing tricky. We have 3 million people moving into cities every week. These 3 million people will need housing, and they will need sustainable housing. So I think you can agree with me, it's a lot of housing that we will need to build. And the housing is a human right. And not just housing or bad housing or cheap housing, but good housing is a human right. So we should build it. And you might think, well, slums are somewhere else, somewhere in the world. But have you heard about fuel poverty? Fuel poverty is pretty much if you aren't able to heat your house. It's too expensive, or your house is built poorly, so it's hard to keep warm. And we have 54 million people in Europe living in fuel poverty. And you can find them in all European countries, not just some. So we should do it for the people. Build sustainable housing because of the people. But we also should build sustainable housing because of the planet. Because otherwise bad things will happen. The planet will be destroyed. And we don't really have another planet to live on at the moment. So as long as we only have this planet, we should kind of focus on this thing. Then we find another one, then it might be a different thing. But the built environment is responsible for 40% of total energy use, about 30% of raw material use, and 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and 40% of solid waste generation. So we should do it for the people and for the planet. So I hope you can agree with me that we need to do this for the people, for the planet. We don't have an option, and we need to do a lot of it. So the solution, how to do this? Firstly, we need to focus on all the points. Remember the recipe I showed you? We need to focus on all the points there, not just some, because if we focus on just some, we will have problems with other ones, and we won't be able to solve the whole complex issue. And the problem that we face with this, firstly, is efficiency. We are really bad with efficiency in the construction sector, and I will show you a little bit how bad we are. 90% of construction projects globally face delays or budget problems. That's not a good thing. We are failing, and we are failing bad in the construction sector. And if you look at productivity, we are actually going backwards. We are not actually learning how to do things better in the construction sector. We are getting worse at it. So you look at the problem and the scale of it. We are not actually heading towards a solution. We are going in another direction. And if you compare to manufacturing, which has become better at productivity, which has been it has made able a lot of products to a lot of people in the world. People have more cars, if that's a good thing or not. But people have phones. They have things now that they didn't have before because it's actually getting more efficient. So more people get access to it. Not so with sustainable housing. Okay, we need knowledge. A lot more knowledge, because as I said, we are bad at what we are doing today. We need knowledge, we need a lot more research. A lot more research on how to solve these issues. And when we have the research done, we need to teach the people doing it. Because I also noticed that you might have a perfect building, a sustainable building on paper, on the drawings. But if the person or the persons, the people actually building the house, if they don't know what they're doing, they're going to make a bad building, even though it's in theory should have been a good one. So we need a lot of education, a lot of research to find these new solutions. Life cycle is one thing that is extremely important to focus on as well. Because if we solve the problem of how to efficiently build a lot of sustainable housing, then at some point we need to find the resources, how to maintain them, how to repair them, how to renovate them, or at some point maybe replace them. And if you're going to build 1 billion housing for 1 billion people, and for 3 million every week, and 54 million in Europe, all these buildings, this housing will need to be repaired. And there's a lot of resources. We're already using 30% of the plant's resources to building these things. How will we be able to maintain them? We need to think about the future as well. We need new materials. As I said, we are really bad at productivity, efficiency, and the materials there might be one of the reasons. We are using the materials we have always used. So we need new materials to solve this issue. But with new materials, we will also have new problems, new consequences. We don't know how these materials will work 40 years into the future, 50 years, or maybe even 100 years. But this is the single most important issue when it comes to building sustainable housing. It is the production methods. We need to find new ones. We cannot solve this issue the way we do it today. And the solution is not to have the builders run faster, build faster, do things faster. No, we need to find new methods on how to do this. And we are looking at things. We have a 3D printing of houses. We have prefabrication. We have all kind of interesting things that we are trying out. But if I'm honest, I haven't really seen one solution yet that would actually solve this whole issue. But we need to focus on production methods. And finally, seeing is believing. I have honestly not, this is my claim, I have not yet seen the solutions tried out anywhere yet. And before we see these solutions being tried out in richer countries who can actually afford to test this, we will not see them in the countries with great challenges. So seeing is believing, and I believe also, and this is kind of the point of my talk, I want to put into the minds of you the idea that the solution might come from a surprising source. And also kind of say that we in the construction sector might not be the ones who will solve this issue, that we might need you or someone else to come and help us with this. So seeing is believing, and I hope that someone will jump in and help us a little bit. And I want to end with a quote by Winston Churchill. We shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. And this is just a little bonus point I want to make, is we talk a lot about releasing the potential of all people. It's hard to release your full potential if you live in a building that makes you sick, a building that is dirty, bad. So if the reasons I've presented to you today make sense, then I hope that we all can realize that this is an issue that we all need to think about, and think about how can I, in my field of profession, maybe contribute to the solution. Thank you.